Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from PowerSonic and Apprentice 121. We are on another solar job, but in this one we're going to focus in on the testing. So we've got 18 panels going up on this roof. I'll show a few little clips of what we've been doing in terms of that and around the inverters. But I really want to run through all of the test instruments, both AC and DC. So we're going to have a look at how you perform some of those tests, why it's important that you do so, and the equipment that we use in getting that complete. And we'll start with the PV IsoTest. And I'll pop up a little video of me running through some of the features of this alongside the inverter behind me. But in essence, this has a few different test features. You can do your insulation resistance testing. Now with this one, it will do it up to 1500 volts on the strings. So if you've got a big array that's generating a lot of power, this will happily still carry out your insulation resistance test. It can also do an earth continuity measurement. So if you've got an array frame that's earthed, it can check to make sure you've got the continuity in place between there back to the main earthing terminal. And you can also do a voltage measurement, and you'll see when I carry out this test that you can do it very safely if you've got a local DC isolator, which is why in my opinion it's really important to have those separate isolators from the inverters, because you can make all your connections with the probes with no power in place. And it kind of falls more within the electricity work regulations than totally ignoring that. So for us, we always fit the DC isolators. Now this also will do finding a fault. So if you've got a fault in the system, you can use this to try and approximate the distance in the string to where that is, and then go and locate it. Obviously this is a new install and we haven't caused a fault, so I can't demonstrate that particular test at the minute. But that's the PV IsoTest. And again, they're from TIS. Fantastic product. Let's have a look at what else you can use. Okay, so we've also got the PVcheck. This is in essence the multifunction tester of solar systems. It has much of the same features as the IsoTest, but with a few important added extras and differences. So with this one, you can do what's termed the IVCK test. And basically that's a system test, so it'll run through and do the voltage measurements, the current measurements in the system. It'll take an irradiance value, do your insulation resistance measurement, and also check that earth bond if one is in place onto the array frame. It does it all in one simple test, and then it will output that in a certificate format should you wish, or electronically for you to review and amend into your documentation later on. And on top of that, it has the other tests separately as well, so you can still do your earth continuity test as a separate test. You can do your insulation resistance test. This doesn't go as far as the 1500 volts. So I think you need to be mindful of that. If you have got larger arrays, that's where the IsoTest comes into its own. And it will do an efficiency test, so it will tell you how your panels are performing, alongside a product I'll show you in a minute that we use to put on the roof alongside the array, so we can see how the system's performing based on the sun that's hitting onto it. And you can also do adjustment of the settings within this. So if there is a remote probe for the irradiance meter essentially, so the system I've got uses a hardwired lead, and you're kind of limited to about 3 meters away from the instrument up to the array, which obviously if you're out on the roof isn't practical. So there's a remote transmitter that I've currently got on order, which you can use. If you activate that in the settings, you can then take your irradiance meter onto the roof with that remote probe, and it will transmit the data live back to the instrument. So that gives you really high accuracy on what the array is doing, to what sunlight is hitting it. So that's the PVcheck from TIS. So this is the little irradiance meter I was talking about, and I'll pop a little clip of me putting it onto the roof. As I said, the lead comes off the top straight into the instrument with the current setup I've got. I was able to make it work here because this is a relatively small roof, as I'll show you later on in this video. It's just a case of going around the back of this timber building and popping that onto the array, so we know what sunlight's hitting it while we carry out our test measurements. And that's really important because obviously the values we have are based on standard test conditions, and when you're installing your solar equipment onto a structure, it could be a cloudy day, it could be cold, it could be hot, it could be dead direct sunlight at those standard test conditions. Comparing what you're actually outputting based to this is super important in terms of your panel's performance, so it's well worth getting one of these in your kit. And then we've got the clamp meters. So this one is the TIS 570, and you'll have seen me using this a lot on the channel already in AC systems in domestic and commercial premises, and these are really handy for seeing what current's flowing in an earthing conductor, for example, so you can see any DC or AC leakage to help you identify a problem with maybe a blinded RCD, or if you've got excess leakage current upsetting RCDs, and again just to see what kind of current might be present in an earthing conductor before you go interfering with it. These are super handy on DC as well for all of those reasons, so we can measure for any current that's flowing in the PV string cabling, and also use it to see any DC and AC current that might be leaking through the earthing conductor, because for those who've been in PV a while, you will appreciate a lot of the older inverters do actually naturally leak a lot of current to earth of both the AC and DC variety. And this clamp meter comes in, I think it's the PV200 kit from TIS, alongside an irradiance meter. I use this on surveys primarily, and again you can do basic clamp meter readings so you can see DC and AC currents, but there is the added benefit of multimeter functions within this as well. It's a really handy and useful clamp meter outside of solar, but this is in my surveying kit. I should mention this as part of the efficiency test. So this is a clamp that goes around the PV string positive leg, and it's so it can see what current is flowing to determine how efficient your system is performing. So that's another instrument that goes into the top of the PVcheck, so you can measure and determine if you've got a good performance on your PV array. And we've got a relatively new addition to the fleet. This is the HT9025. Again, I've shown this on the channel on social media before, but you've got a massive colour screen on there, a whole range of tests. So this will do your AC and DC current leakage through the jaws, it'll do voltage measurement, current measurements, capacitance testing, temperature. It's all in there, and it will also do data logging. So if you want to leave this set on a system to see what's actually been running through it over a period of time, you can store it up into this and review it later on. It gets used extensively, so if we've left a system like this and it's logging its data into the software, so in this case these are Solax inverters, you can leave this logging alongside it and see if the values that the equipment's telling us we're getting has actually been recorded in this instrument. So it's a really good way of verifying your installations. And yeah, another fantastic piece of equipment from TIS. As I say, the whole range of stuff they've got is off the scale. If you've not seen it, go and check out some of their product books. It's absolutely full of stuff that's really useful to any electrician in any sector, but in particular for those of us who maybe work in solar PV and battery storage. And the thing with solar PV systems is you have the traditional AC circuits that still require all of the testing we're used to doing day to day. So of course there's the voltage indicators, and this one is my TIS 859. This is in my safe isolation kit, and I've been doing some safe isolation today as part of the works we've got going on. So this is the one I've been carrying that out with. I've also got the new voltage indicator from TIS that does both AC and DC voltage measurement, and I've shown that on the channel as a standalone video before, but that is an excellent voltage indicator as well. You also have the prongs on top of it for measuring current, so you've got a few extra added features into that. And it just shows the range of equipment TIS have for us to use and utilise. And before we close this one up, I'll show you my favourite of them all. We've got my personal favourite, the TIS MFT Pro Plus, and this has all of the usual features baked in to do with continuity, insulation resistance testing, loop impedance and RCD testing as we need in terms of our normal electrical certificates, but it is packed with some important and extra added benefits. So it will do a power quality analysis combined with the clamp that I'll show you in a minute, so you can see if the quality of your supply is of good order. It'll do a leakage current measurement, so if you want to do earth leakage current measurement from the MFT, that will do this as well. It'll do environmental measurements in terms of temperature with the suitable probes. It can do a volt drop measurement as well, so you can use this to determine what volt drop you might have at end of line, and I've demonstrated how you do that on the channel before with this instrument. You can also do your phase sequence measurements if you're on a 3-phase system. There's the EVSE test sequence, which is amazing for anyone who's commissioned EV charge points. Alongside the EV100, it makes it so simple, and you also get all of those results exported in a file that you can use in your certificates really easily. There's the auto mode for your ZE, ZS and your PFC, PSC and RCD tests. So if you want to leave the instrument and run through and do those tests automatically, you can do. And then super duper importantly for us as solar PV installers alongside battery storage is people tend to want to go into island mode, and as such we need to have an earth electrode. And this will do earth resistance testing in both the traditional way in terms of doing that live as a ZE measurement, and with the ground spikes that you can put out in the area around your earth electrodes and get a value of RA. That's the added extra in the MFT Pro Plus compared to the MFT Pro. So the MFT Pro doesn't do that earth spike test. All of the other features in here are in that model as well. And this is one of the best instruments I've bought from TIS. As you can see, we solely use TIS now for all of our testing requirements because they have such a wide range and they do cover every single area, and there's familiarity between all of the products to allow us to be confident in the values we're measuring and also be used to using them. It's very difficult to swap between different brands of instruments, I find, so we're sticking with the same ecosystem across the board, and I can't fault it. The value for money on this thing is insane. So these are half the price of some of the other competitors in the market with twice the features, so it's an absolute no-brainer for me. And there's the TIS PV1, and this again goes in the surveying kit. So this is your irradiance meter where you can go up onto a roof elevation and see what kind of light might be hitting it based on the time of year and daylight conditions. So you can form a calculated view on what an array might be expected to produce beyond what just software will tell you. So it's really handy, and again you can use it alongside the irradiance meter I've showed earlier in this video just to double check that they're both in alignment with each other and you know the figures that they're pulling are reasonably accurate. So you can see that close up there. You've got a basic set of values where you can zero the instrument, you can adjust the range if you wish, and you can change the unit of measurement as well to BTU or your watts per meter squared. So you've got all those features on the product. Really handy to just put in your pocket and use out on surveys or when you're out on a roof surface. It's not an especially bulky bit of equipment to carry. It allows you to make sure you're doing the right thing in terms of performance calculations on your solar systems. So this is the clamp for the power quality analysis and your earth leakage. It is a bit of a bulky clamp, but it's super reliable and it connects straight into the top of the MFT Pro Plus. I think it was around 250 quid or so, so it's not a low cost investment, but having all of those features in the one product avoids carrying loads of test instruments around with you. So if you're going off into a plant room to carry out a base load of testing and you don't want to be dragging everything up to the top floor where they often place all this stuff, it's really easy to just take your MFT Pro Plus and all of the little suitable attachments and you can get cracking without carting a whole bag load of test gear up there with you. And these are the panels up on the roof. So these are Jinko 470 watt panels. You'll see they're not the all black variety, but they still look really nice in my opinion. They're mounted on Van der Valk rails, so they're all fixed to the roof structure, and this is a dedicated roof for the solar panels that the customers had built. It's at the perfect angle for the best generation through the course of the year, and we're all up and running now, as you can see at the inverter, kicking out 3 kilowatts off this bottom string here. I still need to commission and test the top string, but it's a good indicator that we're going to get some really nice generation. These are optimized because there is a tree over here, and as the sun moves across this back elevation, you can see at the minute it's high up in the sky there. There will be a bit of shading in late evening, and we wanted to maximise generation, especially in the winter months, by allowing some optimisation on these panels. And yeah, they've come up an absolute treat. They're mounted in exactly the right place, so these are basically the length divided by 5 for the mounting points on these Jinko N-Type 470s. And yeah, very happy with that. This roof structure is just to really park machinery underneath that they have. Generally, it's only been placed here for the solar panels to feed into the 2 buildings on this customer's property, which thankfully have 2 separate supplies. So we're all good to go in terms of everything down this end. So you can see our inverter down here is currently generating 2,840-ish watts, and it's around 11 o'clock in, what is it, the 6th of September today. So that's kind of what we'd expect for this time of day in direct sunlight. It's doing really, really well, and you can see down here we've got our DC isolators, and again the strings come straight into these. So if we isolate the power, it kills power off to the SPDs and also up to the inverter. So we've got an SPD here on each string, and as I showed during the course of the testing, these have points to one side where you can disconnect a little terminal bar, so the SPDs are taken out of the test sequence for your insulation resistance testing, because obviously if you were going about testing these with those links in, they will drop all of your current to earth, because that's what they're supposed to do, and give you a failed result. We do have the inverter on the other side here for the top string, so this one's running off to the house, and the other one is doing the plant room. They've both got individual supplies into them, and our main feed cables go from here back to those two locations. So whilst the array is in a shared position, the consumption of all this is in a different place. So we need to put some 400 volt warning labels on the containment as well, just so people are aware that there are a couple of different phases down in this area should they ever come to do any work, to make sure that they can be safe. So have you enjoyed looking through this one with me and seeing all of the different types of test equipment you can use to verify both your AC and your DC? It's really important we do that in terms of the information we're recording for our certificates for Part P, if it's domestic premises, and also the NCS requirement in terms of the array and battery storage systems that need to be tested off as well. So we try and cover those bases as best we can. We're not going to be perfect. I'm sure there's things we could do better. If you've got any tips and tricks for us to learn through the course of sharing this video, please do drop them in the comments below. I absolutely love learning from the audience watching this stuff, telling me where I'm going wrong so we can improve and become better in the future. If you've got any other questions around the video, please also drop them in below, and otherwise I'll see you on the next one.